Happy Families podcast. It's the podcast for the time-poor parent who just wants answers now.
For me, it's just this wonderful freedom that it seems like the less you have, maybe the easier life could be.
And now here's the stars of our show, my mum and dad.
I look forward to Fridays so very much for a couple of reasons. First of all, I mean, the weekend's nearly here. Who's going to be not happy about that? But secondly, it's because our Friday podcast is called I'll Do Better Tomorrow. For those of you who are new to the podcast, and we welcome you, it's so great to have you listening. The purpose of our Friday I'll Do Better Tomorrow podcast is for Kylie and I to reflect on the week that was for us and look at the stuff we did well, the stuff we didn't do so well, and try to do more of the good stuff and a little less of the not so good stuff. We try to be more intentional and reflective as parents to make our family happier. Oh, by the way, I am Dr. Justin Coulson, the co-host and parenting expert on Channel 9's TV show, number one TV show, I might just add, Parental Guidance. And Kylie, hi.
Hi.
Mum to our 6 kids and podcast co-host extraordinaire. Hey, Kylie, did you? That was quite French, wasn't it?
That was a bit
Jan
French.
and Don aren't on the show anymore. Somebody's got to hold the French flag high. That one was for you, Jan. The podcasts at happyfamilies.com.au email address has been overheating this week. We've had a lot of response to not only our parental guidance episodes, but also to a couple of episodes from last week that really got people going. One of them was one of the hardest podcast episodes we've ever had to do. It was last week's I'll Do Better Tomorrow, where I didn't end up sharing anything because I couldn't speak. And you talked about the devastating loss that our friends suffered of a newborn baby. And we received quite a lot of feedback from that, but one in particular stood out to you and you thought it was worth sharing because we just love your feedback so much and we want you to know that we read all of it.
One of our regular listeners said, I've just listened to Friday's podcast and wanted to say thank you and give you a virtual hug. That was one of the very, very few times I've heard someone talk about neonatal death with genuine empathy rather than sympathy. My first wife and I lost our son in similar circumstances in 2002. Like your friends, we knew from very early on that something was wrong. And at 27 weeks, he was born, weighing 680 grams. Wow. We at least had 42 days with him, so we had time to be baptised and family could visit. The turnout to the funeral was beautiful and we were surrounded by people that loved us, but the only people that managed to say something of any substance were those who had experienced the loss of a child also. So to hear you talk with such emotion, even after all this time, was truly beautiful. Thank you. Now
that you've said that, I'm still really affected by what we talked about, and that email has actually brought it back. Even though we agreed that we were going to talk about it, it's just so hard. Onto a different topic. Last week we also had a really interesting conversation about sleep training, and we talked with Kylie Grubb from Beyond Sleep Training about how we can make sure that we don't go down that path. This is always a controversial topic, but we received a really wonderful email from Scott and Sarah to podcasts at happyfamilies.com.au. The email is the length of a short book.
Wow.
And it's a great email and I appreciated it so very much. But the upshot, the short version of it is they love the podcast. As it happens, Sarah has done a bit of research and she's highlighted something that we didn't talk about in last week's podcast, but I know for a fact to be true. And that is that the whole sleep training issue is, number one, very, very, very controversial. People have huge opinions about it. It's so emotive. But number two, from a research point of view, the reality is it's pretty under-researched. There's not a lot of data around. And what little data there is, well, the fact that there's so little data, people want to jump all over it and argue for one thing or another. And what she basically said was, we've got a couple of kids, but she's just finished sleep training one of their children. She said, I didn't want to do it. I never wanted to do it. I think that it's a terrible option. I wish that I hadn't had to do it. But sometimes the not best option is the best option. And she says, this is why. The mother who is so tired she drifts off to sleep while she's bathing her baby. The father who's so frustrated that the baby won't sleep that he feels like shaking it. The mother who is so strung out that she's starting to feel depressed and distant from her baby. The truth is that parenting is messy. And then she says sometimes the not best option is, well, the best option. And then she shares some stories about what they went through and why they made the decision to sleep train. And then she said something and it really struck me deeply, and I'm going to share it because we love your feedback. She said, when I heard the podcast, I felt defeated. I felt guilty. I felt trapped. Should I not put her in her cot for a nap today? Should I try one of the dozens of failed other settling methods? And eventually, she says, my reason in writing is that I think that many parents sleep train out of necessity, not out of delight. And while it's an unpleasant experience, there's no real reason to believe that you're damaging your child based on what research we do have, especially if it allows you to be more loving and responsive to their needs in all the other moments. But mainly because sometimes what us exhausted parents need to know is that the kids are going to be okay. And so I wanted to just give Scott and Sarah acknowledgement, because even though we do try to put out what is going to be best, either from research or from a logical or emotional or ethical point of view, we recognise that sometimes you just got to do what you got to do. And it was such a wonderful email. And Scott and Sarah, thank you so very much for taking the time to send it through. We love your feedback. Podcasts at happyfamilies.com.au. With that all said and done, let's talk I'll Do Better Tomorrow. Kylie, we've both had experience this week that have helped us to be better or not so better as parents. After the break, we're going to hear from you, and then I'm going to wrap things up.
It's the Happy Families Podcast.
For a happier family, try a Happy Families membership, because a happy family doesn't just happen. Details at happyfamilies.com.au.
It's the Happy Families Podcast, the podcast for the time poor parent who just wants answers now. And today we're sharing our reflections from the week that was.
First of all, a couple of reflections from you via our email address, podcast at happyfamilies.com.au. But when we talk I'll Do Better Tomorrow, this is our opportunity to be intentional and mindful. Kylie, what's struck you this week about your parenting?
You know, watching Parental Guidance with our children beside us
It's been fun.
has really brought up a whole heap of conversation around the dinner table, and especially in the car the next morning, as they've had, slept on the things that they've seen, and we've been able to talk about things on the way to school. And I think that what I really want to highlight today is just, as I've watched it, there's been opportunity for me to reflect on the things that I'm doing in my role as a mother in our home, and the take-homes for me, the things that I'd like to do more of, that I'm aware are not strengths of mine, but I see it and I know that I can, and I have done them in the past, but I'd like to see more of them in our family. When the nature parents were kids for a day, and the dad, made his little sculpture, and he told his mum, come and have a look, what have I done?
Yeah.
Look what I've done. And she kind of just brushed him, and it really affected him. And I have to say, I'm probably that parent often, because as a mum at home, I'm constantly doing 101 things at a time. And so the kids come and show me something, and I'm like, I've just got to get this load of washing out before the sun goes, or whatever it is.
Just got to finish dinner.
I've just got to finish. And so constantly feeling like I'm on the go. And it's hard for me to be in the moment sometimes and appreciate what my children are actually trying to get my attention for. And so that was a really big moment where it just kind of made me reflect on how I can be more intentional in showing up for them. But I also loved watching, again, the nature parents and just the curiosity that their kids had. Just the way they all worked together, and they loved being in their space. That, again, is not something that comes natural to me. And being curious scares me a little bit. I don't like the unknown.
Yeah.
And so again, just highlighting that this is something I have done and I know I can do, but it doesn't come naturally to me. Pushing myself to try new things and be open to asking questions, to discovering things, and even if it makes me look like I'm silly because I don't know all the answers.
What I love about your I'll Do Better Tomorrow is at the start of the week, you were like, they live in a tent. They don't send their kids to school. Like, it was really foreign to you. And yet, as you've reflected on the week, the family that's probably been most influential in your insights and your desire to do better has been the family that you were least responsive to when the show began.
Maybe, but they weren't the only ones. They're just the ones I've highlighted to start with.
Right, okay. Well, we could talk all day about our reflections on the TV show. In the interest of this being the podcast for the time poor parent who just wants answers now, my reflections, my I'll Do Better Tomorrow also ironically relate to Richard and Learden, the nature parents from Parental Guidance.
You're giving me a hard time. Should we live in a tent?
Well, I don't know that our kids don't close the door. Why not? I can't get them to close the door for anything.
I'm loving the idea of just one room.
Yeah.
One room
Tidy up done in half an
They
hour.
can't fight
10
over get out of my room because they're all in there.
For me, it's just this wonderful freedom that it seems like the less you have, maybe the easier life could be. But I get the sense with watching all of this, this weekend, I want to spend time in nature with our kids. I want to go somewhere with a really relaxed agenda and say, let's just spend time together. Let's take it easy, enjoy one another's company. And as I've watched these parents connect, these good parents, these brave parents, whether it's Andrew and Miriam, who might be strict, but they definitely know how to have fun with their kids, and their kids are great kids. Or whether it's Richard and Leah and their nature parents, or Lara and Andrew, who are just so doing everything they can to be tuned into their kids. Or Brett and Tony, who are just like, it's a bit of a madhouse with the 4 boys. So much energy in that house.
And no one has more energy than Tony
He's
himself.
A funny guy. And Jan and Donna, who are just such a great couple with such a gorgeous kid. One thing I will say, though, I wish that little old Harper got to have a bit more fun. And watching her experience with a mum particularly who isn't that keen on playing with her. I'm not shaming Donna. Donna's a great mum and she's such a delight to have had on the show. But comparing what Harper's life is like living in the unit in Sydney compared to Richard and Leardon's kids living in that tent and having that freedom to explore, it's just made me want to make sure that the kids get out this weekend and really explore and that we're there with them and living life and really experiencing it with them. So that's my I'll do better tomorrow. It's been a long week in the office. There's been a lot of work to do. And this weekend, it's all about family time outside. So that's my take-home message. Make sure you get outside and explore nature and freedom with your kids. And your one?
Be in the moment. Get curious, even if you don't know all the answers.
Sounds great. We can't wait to join you again or have you join us again on Monday morning for our next Happy Families podcast. And, of course, Monday night Parental Guidance continues as we are introduced to 5 new families and 5 new parenting styles. The Happy Families podcast is produced by Justin Rulon from Bridge Media with Craig Bruce as our executive producer. If you'd like more info about making your family happier, we invite you to check us out at happyfamilies.com.au and have a great weekend.